Okay, thank you, Tia. All right, I have the honor of introducing myself, so I get to talk about myself. My name is Tom Rutledge. I've been working with Brian and Deborah and the other Brian you've heard from. So today I'm going to tell two short stories. The first story is about myself and why I'm here. I think when I'm done with the story, you'll understand why I'm actually standing up here. And the second story is about why we're all here, which is why making matters, and more particularly, why making matters to Hartford. So first, the story about myself. As I said, I had met Brian and Deborah a little while ago, and so I invited them over to my house. And when we were there, they were kind of admiring some of the furniture in my house, and I was like, well, you know, I made it. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. You want to see my shop? So we go out to my barn, and when I say a shop, it's a 3-car garage, huge-ass barn. It's a big shop, big place. I started showing them through it. I brought them out back, and there's a mill and a kiln and all that stuff. And you know, after a few minutes of showing them my shop, they're all just kind of staring at me with that weird, like, deer in headlights kind of look. And I kind of looked at them, and I'm like, what? Doesn't everybody harvest their own lumber and, you know, mill it, dry it, you know, put it in a kiln and plane it and, you know, make furniture? And I just remember Deborah, you know, you saw her earlier. She's like, no, Tom, not everyone does that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you want to see the rest of my shop? And Deborah's like, well, what's that thing over there? And I'm like, oh, I needed to make a bent lamination, a curved piece of furniture, so I needed a vacuum press. So, you know, I went to the dump and found a pump and some hoses and some wires, and I needed a frame, so I cut down a maple tree, and, you know, so I have a vacuum press. Well, what's that over there? Oh, you know, that's a drum sander and a belt sander. I always thought it was silly that they sold two of those separately, so I went to the dump again, found a motor and some belts and things, and put two of the tools together and used the rest of that maple tree to make a nice sturdy base. Again, I get that look from Deborah, and I'm like, what? Doesn't everyone, you know, make their own machines to do household projects? No, Tom. No, not everyone does that. And they're looking at me, and then finally Deborah says, Tom, you're a maker. And I was like, huh? You know, 6 months ago I didn't know what a maker was. So apparently I'm a self-proclaimed maker and expert verified by a whole committee. So that's why I'm standing up here, because apparently I'm a maker. So then I started getting involved, because now that I know who I am, you know, I figured I might as well make something of it. So I'm going to tell you a second story of why making matters, and why it matters to Hartford, and what it could be, and what it isn't, and what it should be. So another little story I have is, I grew up riding skateboards, and I loved riding skateboards, and, you know, I got a little older and had kids and stuff like that. But in the 90s, snowboards came out. In the early 2000s, longboards came out, because the snowboarders needed something to do in the summertime. So, you know, you've seen them. They look like skateboards, but they're really long, and they're all over the neighborhoods and stuff. So I started making them, because I knew how to ride. And I ended up making some really, really high-performance pieces of art. And so I got a Facebook page and a little website, and I started selling them. And before I knew it, selling them all over the country. I've got people from Australia and Japan and South Korea, and the Spaniards out in Spain, they love riding. They were calling me. They wanted me to make boards for them. And so I was like, holy cow, this is really good. I was charging 3 to 4 times market price, and right out of my basement. And there I was saying, all right, this is real. I can make this work. Problem is, it took me about 10 hours to make one board. I was making it by hand. Now, my professional career, I've spent most of the time in factories, walking around factories. So I knew how to build things. I knew what I needed. I needed a CNC. I needed a heated press. I needed adhesive. I needed guns. Blah, 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 blah. And I add it all up. And, you know, I had disposable income, maybe 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 if I skipped Disney World for a few years or something. And I had some disposable income, but I had no way of knowing how big of a press I needed, how big of, what was my true manufacturing process. There was no way for me to prove it out so that I would know with confidence what my standard operating procedure was, what my takt time was, what my cycle time was, so I could do my manpower analysis, how many people I would need, how many square feet I would need, and so on and so on and so on. I know how to build a factory. The problem is I didn't know how to mass produce a skateboard. Now this is only about 5 years ago. Had there been a makerspace right here in Hartford, I would have easily run a production run of maybe 50 or 100 boards using a CNC router, or maybe a water jet cutter, or maybe a laser jet cutter. I really don't know what the best way to cut a skateboard is. All I know is that each one of those machines is $50,000. So for me to try, well, I hope I guessed right. So my point is that had there been a makerspace 5 years ago in Hartford, I would have run a small production run of maybe 100 boards. I would have understood my cycle time. I would have understood my manpower analysis and my manpower planning. And I would have gone to Vernon or Bloomfield or Windsor and gotten an industrial park and built a factory. I would have had enough confidence to get investors. I would have had enough confidence to put my own money in. And I honestly believe that Hartford, although the insurance capital of the country, would have been known as the best skateboard producer on the East Coast, and I would have been giving those California boys a run for their money. But the simple fact is, I'm not. I got too big, couldn't fill the orders, I had a day job, I had 3 kids in private school. I quit. I turned down, I shut off the website, finished my last order, and it's over. No new jobs were created, no factory was created, no skateboard legacy out of Hartford was created. So that's what a makerspace does. I'm the type of person that would benefit from it. But it's not just me, it's everybody I would have hired. It's the entire industrial park that I would have built. But I can tell you right now, I'm not going to do it. So the next person that I'm going to introduce knows more about this subject than I certainly do. His name is Mark Hatch, and he's the CEO of Tech Shop. Previous CEO, excuse me, and then he, where they have 8 sites, and there's even more on the way. He wrote a book called the Maker Movement Manifesto. And in it, there's entire sections devoted to what people will do with their disposable income. Now, with my disposable income, I would have gladly run a production run of 100 boards. But I didn't, because I had no opportunity. The barriers to entry into an entrepreneurial manufacturing environment are so high to the common person that their disposable income does not cover prototyping, does not cover the cost of entry. The purpose of a makerspace is to lower those barriers. The people with the will and a little bit of guts have the actual opportunity to do it. So with that, I'm going to leave it over to Mark, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to Skype in. I know it's not optimal, but I think it's important to have these conversations around what spaces can do and so forth. I'm going to switch over to a deck and go through it real quick, just so we've got a roadmap and kind of chat through, and hopefully we can have an opportunity to have some answer some questions at the end. So I'm going to share the screen here. So now you see the dual screen there? Yes. Sort of. That's kind of off, but that'll work. We'll go from here. So I truly do believe that we're in the middle of a massive revolution, and it's being driven by a confluence of factors, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And it's wonderful that you've got Dale in the room, basically the father of all of this activity. We're making amazing amounts of progress at the national level and at some level at the local levels. But these large maker spaces really do require a public-private partnership and need support either from an educational institution or a major corporation within a region. And once that happens, magic actually happens. So if we go down to this slide here, it goes down there. What is a makerspace? I see there like 3 levels. There's a Fab Lab hackerspace. There's a traditional kind of makerspace, call it 15 to 2,500 square feet. And then there's like full-blown innovation centers, which is what I'm describing a tech shop now as, 25,000 square feet. Basically every tool you need to make anything on the planet. And these include mills and lathes. So these are lathes right here. That's a CNC mill there. Laser cutters are a phenomenal tool, very powerful, easy to use. Just about anybody can learn how to use them. I'll give you a couple stories about that. This is a water jet that will cut through 5 inches thick of anything on the planet. We teach people how to use it in 2 hours. Most importantly, what happens is this here. You develop a knowledge community that comes together on every evening, every afternoon, and they hang out together, they work on one another's projects, and they really do help one another drive ideas forward, whether they're ideas just for greeting cards, or maybe an art project or something for the a school play, or whether they're actually commercial. The key is to get people together, hanging out and working in the space. I'm going to skip this conversation about the 6 exponential fields. What I want to do is I want to talk about this new innovation ecosystem that's developed over the last 5 to 10 years. And what we've seen is that the ability, once you have a makerspace, even a software accelerator, a new software, particular a makerspace, if you have a makerspace that has a good array of tools, what you've all of a sudden done is you've democratized access to the tools of the Industrial Revolution. You've made available to people for the cost of basically a coffee addiction, $4 or $5 a day, a space that they can innovate, create, and launch businesses in. And what's happening is that then often an accelerator will wrap its way around it. And then after that, you can look at finance and manufacturing capabilities now that are coming online. And there's easy ways of marketing, and there are easy ways of doing sales. Now, this is relatively speaking. I'm going to go through each of these in just a little bit more detail. So on the research and prototyping side, what we see here are 3 versions of innovation spaces, or big maker spaces. The St. Louis location was the most recent tech shop to open just a couple months ago. It's in a 100,000 square foot building. There's 20,000 square feet on the bottom floor. A couple of years ago, we helped Heimertum in Munich, along with BMW, open a space. Similarly, it's about 100,000 square feet. It has a hardware accelerator embedded in it. It has offices in it. This is the Jacobs Institute in Berkeley, an institute that I just recently joined to help do some research on educational outcomes and economic outcomes for makerspaces. But again, this is like 120,000 square feet. So these are starting to pop up in cities around the globe. And what they're doing is they're giving people access to these tools, giving them the classes that they need, and wrapping them around with services and a knowledge base of other people that can help them commercialize the projects. And so that's kind of the research and development and prototyping. We then have accelerators that are developed, particularly around these spaces. So in California, Lemnos Labs opened within a couple of years of us opening in San Francisco. In Pittsburgh, Alpha Lab here launched. And then we have other ones that have come along. Dragon Innovation out of Boston, Accelerate out of San Francisco in China. And then most interestingly, recently, is actually Flextronics, the second largest contract manufacturer in the world, has opened a hardware accelerator capability. And that is entirely new to the world. We've never lived in an era where you could have access to tools and actually have access to a group of very knowledgeable people who would provide some funding, space, and access to tools and engineering to actually launch, and now we do. Next block is financing. Everything about financing has changed. Kickstarter, crowdfunding, Indiegogo, AngelList, the Jobs Act. Even like Fundrise, which allows you to do real estate. These things, none of these existed 8 years ago, and now they do today, which gives you an opportunity to bootstrap an idea the way we've never been able to do. You combine that capability with the manufacturing capability of a strong makerspace, and you're now opened up a field of economic opportunity that has literally never existed. And then just in the emerging manufacturing side, you can do short runs in a good makerspace. Sometimes you have to negotiate to be in there, in the middle of the day, or middle of the night. It may require that they're high-value, small projects, but you can, in fact, launch a company out of a makerspace. I've seen it done dozens and dozens of times. But more important now, we've got people like Hacks. Jabil is the third largest contract manufacturer. Flex is the second largest. You could go to them now with as little as a sketch. If they like your idea, they will help you scale it. If they'll provide capital that you need to get to float inventory, they will manage negotiating with whoever's going to manufacture, whether it's onshore or offshore. There are people like Dragon Innovation who do the design work if you want to do the manufacturing yourself. And of course, there's always the China option. Don't necessarily like it. Sometimes that's what requires it. So a high volume, thin margin product may have to go that way. But again, what's changed 10 years ago, if you called the Chinese manufacturer and said, I want to make 1,000 of something, they just hung up on you. They wouldn't have been interested. Now you can actually find facilities that are interested in doing as little as 1,000. And then everything's changed on the marketing side. You don't have to pull ads, on television, or the radio, or print. You can social media. You can actually use Kickstarter and Indiegogo to help start your marketing program. Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Google, Facebook ads. That stuff didn't exist 10 years ago either. And then you keep going. And then there's the sales channels. I mean, when I started out, you had to basically go to a retailer. If you're doing any kind of consumer product, business to business, you had to go to a trade show. Typically only happened once a year. You had to randomly run into the right people and get the literature into the right hands. And then good luck, 10, 15 years ago, getting in front of a Walmart buyer or Brookstone's buyer if you're a startup. All of that's changed. You've got Amazon now that will launch a website. They'll actually help you with the logistics of the delivery. You've got eBay. You've got specialty retailers like Grommet. You've got Etsy. You can actually now get into Walmart and Brookstone and others. They have buyers specially set aside to attract products and have new companies launch. And just as an example, included, Brit & Co. and Dodo case. Brit & Co. came out of Tech Shop San Francisco location, learned everything she needed to learn there, has gone into manufacturing, and she goes direct. It's great. It's right online. You have to go through distribution. She has picked up Target and Hallmark recently. At Dodo case as well, they went direct. So you've got an array of options now, sales you've never had before. So you combine, just look at this. You've got access to prototyping, short-run manufacturing, you've got accelerators that can help. You can go get the financing, you can find manufacturing, marketing, and sales. We are literally living in an era where it is easier now to start a company, hardware or software company, than any time in human history. And it's extremely exciting. I'm going to slide down here. So innovation is getting cheaper and easier, and it's an incredibly powerful force for positive change. I just want to hit a couple of stories and then open up some questions. So this is Tina over here. Tina came in, took the laser cutter class, and launched the business. And she's doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's called Better Off Wed. Uses laser cutters on bamboo, toll paints, these wedding toppers and cake toppers. And that was after just taking one class of laser. Karen over here, he lost his job at the San Francisco Chronicle as a copywriter. Copywriting for newspapers is a profession that's close to disappearing. And he came in and said, I'm going to remake myself as a jeweler. And you know what he did? Within a year, he had products in the Museum of Modern Art store here in San Francisco. Last time I talked to him, he had 60 locations across the U.S. and the world distributing what he was doing. David came in and said, what classes do I need to take in order to learn how to use the tools to become a master maker? 9 months later, he owned an underwater robot company. Again, we've never lived in an era where you can pick up all the domain skills you needed in 9 months by leveraging the community, leveraging access to spaces like makerspaces, leveraging financing, Kickstarter to launch the company. He did all of that. We've got this guy here. This is Alexander. This is an automatic robot for building burgers. This thing will do, it's like 300 burgers an hour. He came out of CMU, came into the space, is now working with an accelerator locally. Anton launched this collapsible kayak company, is now in distribution, Dick's Sporting Goods, REI, across the United States and other places around the world. Karen came in and just learned how to use the laser cutter and launched this knitting needle gauge company. And she started making enough money, she was able to quit her job. This is Mark. Mark has been now recognized by the White House a couple of times. He was homeless, came in, learned how to use the tools, played with the laser cutter, started using the laser cutter to produce jewelry, was going out on the street and selling it, was able to reboot his life. He was homeless and became a hacker, learned how to use the tools, launched the company, and then started giving back by starting a nonprofit that brings in homeless people, gives them a mentor, gives them access to the space and community, food and clothing, and helps them for a period of 6 months either go land a job or perhaps even their own business. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There's Britt and Co. again. And then Jane Chen, this is a beautiful portable incubation blanket. It came out of Stanford. They perfected it at Menlo Park location when it was open. And this blanket has helped to save 250,000 lives over the last 3 or 4 years. And she will flat out tell you that she couldn't have launched the company without access to a makerspace. Actually, Britt Warren will tell you exactly the same. She could not have launched without access to the space. And I back up here just since I do this. James McKelvey of Square will tell you the same thing. He couldn't have done it without access to the space. And many of these folks that have actually literally changed the world needed access to these kinds of spaces in order to do what they wanted to do. So I want to challenge you. Here's a really simple challenge. I want you to make something for Christmas and give it away because it will fundamentally change your worldview. If you're not already making stuff, I'm probably speaking to the choir. I suspect everybody in the room is already a maker or a maker. But encourage the friends to try this. And what happened for me is my wife developed an allergy to roses about 6 years ago now. And I hadn't given her roses in a couple of years. Bought a 3D printer, obviously for my kids because they needed a 3D printer. And then did a test print. And I was online at things first. And I saw an elephant, and I saw a chess piece, and I saw a rose. So I chose to print the rose. And you can see the rose. It's not that pretty. It's ugly lime green. It took, 20 or 30 minutes to print it out. Cleaned it up, and when my wife came home, I gave it to her. And she absolutely loved it. She loved it actually more than the locket that I had given her for her birthday. And it's kind of like, why? It wasn't, it's certainly not the quality of the plastic compared to the silver locket. Something about the fact that, I thought about her during the day and I created a physical, tangible object around it and gave it to her. And that is fundamentally different from something. And so I encourage you to do that and reflect, after you've done that, reflect on the meaning that's associated with that object versus buying something at the store and giving it away. So I'm hitting a bunch of different themes. A core theme is this is a revolution. Everything's changing. Everything for starting a company has changed fundamentally in the last 5 years or so. And you can't participate in this revolution. Buy the subscription to Make Magazine, get plugged into a local makerspace, fund a makerspace, get it up and running, get the kids engaged, and you can actually change your life, change the life of your friends, family, and possibly the community. And with that, I'll open it up for a couple of questions. I've just got a few minutes.
All right, anybody want to shout out a question to Mark or come on up and talk to him? I don't know, we're getting crickets here. Is there anything else you wanted to go over, Mark?
I'm not sure. I think the key is to get started. Identify the key constituents in the community, get them together, have these kind of meetings, and get the kids involved. There's nothing like having a little mini maker fair and getting the community to see all these kids showing up to start really driving the interest in a really strong way. And I can't imagine that Hartford wouldn't have a nice size makerspace going in the next 12 to 24 months. I really encourage you to try to give it a shot.
All right, I want to thank you for Skyping into us today. Mark Hatch is traveling all over the world, giving talks in Saudi Arabia and wherever else. Where have you been lately, Mark?
I got back from Jordan a week and a half ago. Amman, Jordan. I was actually in Boston with Dale earlier this week. I'm in San Francisco at the moment, and I'll be in Saudi Arabia at the end of the month. So yeah, lots of travel.
Racking up those frequent flyer miles, huh?
It is a movement, and we've got to get the word out, and we need people like Dale and myself and local folks like you to really get the word and get the message out to let people know that how revolutionary this is, and it's moving too slowly as far as I'm concerned. We should have had a lot more spaces, a lot more project-based learning in schools by now. Dale, what are we? You're at 11 to 12 years into this. It's time for this thing to explode. And I think it is, actually. I think we're getting ready to really see some serious uptake on these concepts.
All right, well, I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for the opportunity. Cheers.